Welcome back. How was y'all spring break? What? Well, I hope it was all right because you didn't have to learn factoring over the break. Ha 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 ha. But today is the day. We start a new 9 weeks. It's like the fourth quarter. You want to be focused. You want to be, if you're doing your test, do your test, right? Right, cool. But we want to finish strong. So if you're passing third 9 weeks, life's good. Okay, you got to keep it up. You got to make sure it doesn't drop and average below 70, right? But more than anything else, we really want you to pass the STAR test. So remember, Wednesdays, tutoring, my room, we're going to be doing a little bit of mastery prep. I know that's not the best, but then we'll do some games and stuff. Okay, so we're going to try to spice it up a little bit. Come on Wednesday, see what it's all about. Get some snacks for free. By the way, from last week, this assignment and this assignment, whoops, are part of this current fourth 9 weeks. They look like this and this. So you did them, question mark, and turned them in already, or you're going to, because that's going to go into this grade section, this fourth 9 weeks, okay? It is, you already have 2 assignments and a test. Remember that test we took on Thursday before the break? Okay, that's going towards this fourth 9 weeks. You could have already seen your grade unaware, and we'll talk about, corrections and stuff like that. But we're going to have a quiz next Wednesday over this factoring quadratic stuff. Let's get to it, okay? Looking up here. So this is very important. This is the meat and potatoes of what we're doing today. You got to be able to factor, right? So here's what I mean by factor. Factoring is dividing out of something what they have in common, right? You're trying to find a common factor, okay? So on this one, number 1, 3x plus 6. Right. What do they have in common? What do 3x and 6 have in common? Well, I'll tell you what they don't have in common. 3x and 6, they don't share an x, okay? So that's good. But they do share a number, 3 and 6. They both can be divided by the same number. They both have a factor. So what goes into 3 and goes into 6? So 2 can go into 6. 2 does not go into 3. But 3 goes into itself, 3, and 3 goes into 6. Okay? So a common factor of 3x and positive 6 is 3. So here's how you write this. Ready? Write 3. And then you're going to put a parentheses. What you're going to do is the factor, you're going to divide each of those terms by that factor, 3. So when I take 3x and divide out the 3 goes away. The only thing left is x. And then 6, if I divide the second term 6 by that 3, 6 divided by 3 is 2, which is positive, so it's plus 2. That is called factoring. You look at both terms, see what they have in common. There's some mental math involved, right? You divide it out, and you write it like this, okay? Now, do y'all remember distribution? Like usually it starts off like this, and you do this like distribution, right? Well, I'm telling you, what we're doing today is backwards distribution, basically, okay? Because what is 3 times x? 3x, that's what we started with, right? And what is 3 times 2? 6, yeah? So it's the backwards of distribution is what we call factoring. Cool? Now, so you're going to have to do factoring like this today, for sure. And then look at number 2. You're going to have to do something like this. What factors do we have in common on number 2 here? So first of all, 4 and 16. It's technically a negative 16. What goes into 4 and 16? So first period said 2, which is right. But what's the biggest number that goes into 4 and negative 16? So I would always try the smallest number, 4, okay? So 4 goes into itself, and 4 goes into negative 16. So 4 is my greatest common factor, okay? Hopefully you went over that in middle school, GCF, greatest common factor. What's the biggest number that goes into 4? Biggest number that goes into negative 16? It's going to be positive 4, okay? We're not done, because check it out. Both of these terms have an x. X squared means there's two X's. X means there's one X. So if there, I need y'all looking up here. When there's two X's and one X, they share one X in common, okay? So whenever you have an X for both terms, you're going to take out an X, okay? So what both terms share is a 4 and an X. So if I divide this first term by 4x, the 4 goes away. You take away one of the x's, you're left with just one extra x, right? I had two x's, I divide out one of the x's, I have one x left over. What's negative 16 divided by 4? Negative 4, and the x's cancel out, divide out. That's it, okay? That is called factoring. That is basic factoring. Okay. This is like something that we kind of assume you have prior knowledge on how to do, because today we're taking it to the next level, okay? We are going to be factoring quadratics, right? Cool. So, lock in with me here, okay? I try to make these notes as concise as I can, okay? There are many ways to do this, and this could take multiple days. We're going to do notes in one day. I got 4 examples to show you, okay? Let me pass this out. Again, all I can ask you to do, stay tuned to what I'm showing you, because there are specific steps, and once you get the hang of it, it's not that bad, okay? Here we go. You can get one? Oh, you don't? No, you don't. Oh. Oh, forgot about it. My bad, my bad. Okay, so look. Here's the front of your notes, solving quadratics by factoring, okay? The very top, it's kind of squeezed in there, but we are talking about standard form. It's going to look something like this, okay? Ax squared plus bx plus c. Basically, you're going to have 3 numbers. There's a number in front of an x squared, a number in front of an x, and a number by itself. So just looking at this little piece at the top, this is called A, this is called B, this is called C. That's what this is showing right here, okay? A, B, and C. That's going to matter when we get to how we're doing this, okay? Now look, I mean, just looking at this, does that look like a ton of steps? It is, okay? I'm not going to lie. It's a lot of steps. I'm going to make this as painless as I can, but again, if you zone out, it's going to be a lot harder. So just stay with me, okay? Here's what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to show you a whole second way to get you all confused, okay? So I'm going to just show you, I'm going to say, look at this method 2. Isn't that nice? They put it in a box. Isn't that cute? But I'm also going to say we're not going to do that, okay? Here's the reason why I'm preferring method 1, okay? Method 2 is basically method 1, but in a box, okay? When you start moving things around into boxes, people forget negative signs. Sometimes it's more complicated, and I'm just trying to save us time, kind of keep it simple. We're going to do this one method, the factor by grouping method, and then I'm going to let you practice tomorrow. But real quick, let me just tell you what's happening in this example, okay? On the left is every step, okay? Let's just think of step 1. Step 1, you need to find AC. Now, do you remember the first number is A, the last number is C, right? A, B, C. So A times C is 2 times 12. What is 2 times 12? 24, okay? That's step 1, A times C. Step 2, you need to find all the factors of that number you just figured out. So 24 I'm going to make a little table and figure out what numbers multiply to make 24. And out of all those numbers, which one adds to make the middle term b, which is positive 10? So out of these four, which of these four add up to make 10? Well, it's going to be 4 plus 6. Okay. So I find AC, figure out what are the factors of it, and then which one of those add up to make the middle number b. Now, once you've done that, here's where it gets kind of spicy, okay? You're going to take that 4 and that 6, okay? And you're going to take your original trinomial and you're going to split that middle term into 4 plus 6, right? Because isn't 10 the same thing as 4 plus 6? Of course it is. But here's why we do it. You are going to end up grouping, and by that I mean put parentheses around the first two, put parentheses around the second two, and then you're going to do what we did on our warm-up, okay? I want you to see this step from step pink, step 4, to step black, step 5. All we did was what we did on our warm-up. What goes into 2 and 4 and has an x in common? 2x. When you divide it out, x is left over. When you divide it out, 2 is left over. That's just like our warm-up. Did you finish that test? Right. We'll work on that. We're done. Good. Okay. And then over here, 6x and 12. What goes into 6 and 12? 6. And when you divide it out, you get x plus 2. Now this is very important. Look, these two, if you do it right, are going to match. Okay. Do you see how the parentheses x plus 2 and x plus 2 are the exact same? If you've done it right, those will match. And here's the magic between step 5 and step 6. That parentheses comes down to the right. And then these two coefficients, right here and here, become their own parentheses. Okay? If you've gotten to this step, you are done with the first step, which is called factoring. Okay? You have successfully factored once you've gotten to step 6. And then the last step is to what we call solve. You set each of these equal to 0, and then you do a little bit of math, and you solve it for x. That is your final solution. So this is called solving, and then this is called factoring. You'll be asked to do either of those things, but without further ado, let's stop looking at it. Let's start doing it. So flip it over. I'm going to just show you how it's done now. Ready? Number 1, okay? This is a trinomial. I see x squared, x, and a number, okay? And the instructions are factor and then solve is what we need to do, okay? Factor each of the following polynomials and solve, okay? We're going to solve it too. So step 1, it was the coolest step. You know why it was so cool? Because it was AC. Get it? AC? Because it was cool. All right, well, anyways, A times C. Now, first of all, what is A, B, and C? A, B, I know B is 5. I know C is 6. But what's A? What number is there? No number means what? Y'all remember this? No number, look where I'm pointing. No number means 1, right? If there's nothing in front of x, that's a 1x, right? Okay, so this is A is 1, B is 5, C is 6. So AC, 8 times C, is 1 times 6. What's 1 times 6? 6. Cool. Now, off to the side, I'm going to make a little table of vector pairs. What multiplies to make 6? And always start with the easiest 1. Start with 1. 1 times 6 is 6, right? We all hopefully know 1 times any number is the same number. Now, this is not a trick, okay? If you change both signs, it will still multiply to make the same thing, because a negative times a negative gives you a positive 6, right? Okay, so I start with 1. Now let's try 2. Does 2 go into 6? 2 times what? 2 times 3 works. And then, of course, change both signs, -2, -3. And that's it, okay? Because you've already used 2 and 3, so you wouldn't use 3 again. Okay, so you're done. Now you're gonna, here's your next step. So you did AC, you made your factor pairs. Which one adds up to make the middle term B, which is 5? Okay, so if I add up 1 and 6, that's not 5. -1, -6, that's not 5. But check it out. 2 plus 3 is 5. Not -2 and -3. That would be -5. Okay, so 2 and 3, that's 5. So far, so good. This is how you do it. Now, I'm going to rewrite my trinomial, x squared plus 5x plus 6, and you are going to split that middle term. 5x is going to split into 2 and 3. Okay, so it's a 5x, and now it turns into 2x plus 3x. Okay, you can bring down x squared plus, bring down plus 6. Okay, so this is very important. You do these steps so you can split the middle term, and now you do what's called grouping, and all that means is you put parentheses on the first two and parentheses on the last two. So here's how I do it. Ready? Parentheses, parentheses. Okay, this is really where I think the toughest step is. You got to do what we did on our warm-up today, which is factor each of those parentheses. Okay, so let's look at that first one. X squared plus 2x. The numbers in front, 1 and 2, there's no factor there. Besides 1, you don't write 1. Okay, but they both, see how they both have an x in common, x squared and x? That means I'm going to factor out just an x. Okay, so if I divide out 1x from x squared, 1 away from 2, there's only 1 left over. And if I take 2x and divide out the x, the only thing left is the number 2, so plus 2. Okay, you're going to see this step a lot. So do you see when they both have an x, you factor out the x, whatever's left, you write inside. Okay. Now let's factor 3x plus 6, this one. What goes into 3 and 6? 3 goes into itself, 3 goes into 6. Hey. Okay, so 3 goes into 3 and 6, so go ahead and put a positive or plus 3. They don't have an x in common, so that's it, just 3. So if I divide this by 3, 3x divided by 3, the only thing left is x. 6 divided by 3 is 2. Now I said it earlier, but you'll know you've done this right if these parentheses match. X plus 2, x plus 2, that's good. Cool? So far so good. Now, what we're going to do is the matching parentheses goes down here. And these coefficients are going to make their own new parentheses. Okay? So x comes down, plus 3 comes down. And that, my friends, is called factoring. Once you have it into 2 parentheses, you have factored. Factoring completed, Mr. G. But now, your last step, okay, and it says it on the front side. You have to set each of these parentheses equal to 0, okay? We are looking for a solution, and we are solving, which is the same thing as a root or a 0 or an x-intercept, okay? So all those different ways of saying the same thing, it's when the y value is 0, that's the x-intercept. So if the y value is 0, that means each factor equals 0. And that just basically sets up a very easy algebra equation. I say easy because it's one step on these in this case. If it's x plus 3 equals 0, how do I get rid of a plus 3? What's the opposite? Minus 3. 0 minus 3 is negative 3. Opposite of plus 2, minus 2. 0 minus 2 is negative 2. Cool. And that is your solution. Okay, that's the solution. So I got factors in parentheses. I set them equal to 0. Those are my solutions. That is called factoring by grouping. If you can get the groove of the steps, you'll be able to factor. Okay. Let's do another one. What was that really cool first step? A times C, right? Because it's so cool. Please. So what's A, B, and C? A, B, C. A is missing, so that's 1. B is 8. C is not just 20, it's negative 20, right? Alrighty then, let's do AC. A times C. It's going to be 1 times negative 20, which is negative 20. Cool. And what are we going to do? Let's go ahead and write negative 20 off to the side and start figuring out what are our factors. What multiplies to make negative 20? Let's always start with 1. 1 times negative 20. And switch the signs. So if it's positive 1, negative 20, it can also be negative 1, positive 20. No matter where the negative is, it'll multiply to make a negative answer as long as there's not 2 negatives. Those cancel out. Okay? So after 1, let's try 2. 2 times what is negative 20? Negative 10. Also negative 2 and positive 10. 3, you can try, okay, but if you like did 20 divided by 3, you wouldn't get a whole number, so 3 doesn't work. What about 4? 4 times negative 5, negative 4 times 5. That's it, because after 4 is 5, we already got that on there. These are all the possible factor pairs of negative 20. And which one am I looking for? I'm looking for which pair adds to make B, the middle term, which is 8. Okay? So 1 minus 20 is not 8, negative 1 plus 20 is not 8, 2 minus 10, negative 2. Looks like it might be one of these two. The last two make 9, like 1 or 9 or what? No. So you tell me, is it 2 minus 10 or negative 2 plus 10? Which one is going to give me a positive 8? Negative 2 plus 10. Okay, let me tell you, the 2 and the minus 10 would give you a negative sign 8, and we do not have a negative sign 8, a positive sign 8. Okay, so it's very important that you're very careful about which ones you pick. One wrong move could send you the wrong direction. So what do I do, Mr. G? Remember, we rewrite that original x squared plus 8x minus 20 . And then we split the middle, split that 8x into negative 2 and 10. Negative 2x plus 10x. And we're going to bring down the first term, x squared, bring down the last term, minus 20. Cool. And then we need to group. So the first 2 terms group, the last 2 terms group. And then we are going to factor each parentheses, right? So that first pair, the coefficient 1 and 2 does not have a factor, but they both have an x. So I'm going to take out an x. And when I take away 1x from x squared, when I divide x, I end up with 1x left over. X squared divided by x is x. And if I take negative 2x divided by x, I remove that x and I just have minus 2. Gotta be able to factor. Okay. Now the next parentheses, 10 and minus 20, sounds like there might be a factor between 10 and minus 20. Could be 2, but that's not the greatest common factor. What's the biggest number that goes into 10 that also goes into negative 20? Try that smaller number 10, and it is. 10 goes into itself 10, 10 goes into negative 20. So let's divide both by 10, a positive 10. They don't have an x in common, so let's just divide by 10. If you divide 10x by 10, you remove the 10, and now you just have x. Then negative 20 divided by 10 is negative 2. Like I said, if you did it right, the parentheses will match, and they do. X minus 2, x minus 2. Scooby-Dooby-Doo. All right, so we're going to take that parentheses and bring it around town. Here, hold on one second. X minus 2. And then I'm going to take the coefficient x and plus 10, and it's going to become its own parentheses, x plus 10. When you get to this position, that is great. That is called factoring. Those are the factors of the original trinomial. But it's not solved yet. Remember, you have to set each parentheses equal to 0. Okay, so x plus 10 equals 0. X minus 2 equals 0. And again, do a little bit of math to solve these. To get rid of that positive 10, I do minus 10, minus 10. 0 minus 10 is negative 10. Minus 2, to get rid of it, you add 2. 0 plus 2 is 2. So we successfully did find the factors, and we solved to find the solutions for number 1 and 2, right? Okay. Make sure you have those down. We're going to try 3 and 4. Does anyone still need this? Okay, so there is something important about number 3. Now, the way I say it is you want to factor first, so go and write that down. Factor first. What do I mean by that? Look at A, B, and C. 4, negative 6, negative 18. They all have a common factor because they're all even. I can divide something out of 4, 6, and 18, and the biggest number that goes into all those is going to be 2. So if I factor out a 2, divide each of these by 2, I get 2x squared minus 3x minus 9. You always want to factor first if you can. And just to zoom out here, the first one you could not factor first. There was no common factor of 1, 5, and 6. The second one you could not factor first, 1, 8, and negative 20. Okay, when your a value is 1, you can't really do this. But if your a value is not 1, see if you can factor out of every term. Then, what are we going to do? Just like before, a times c is 2 times negative 9 is negative 18. What are the factors of negative 18? 1 times negative 18, negative 1 times 18, 2 times negative 9, negative 2 times 9. We can try 3. 3 times negative 6, negative 3 times 6. 4 doesn't work, 5 doesn't work. So that's it. And then I'm thinking about which one of these pairs adds up to make this middle term in my second step, negative 3. So I'm adding these mentally, negative 3. It's got to be one of these last two. Which one of these last two added together gives me negative 3? 3 and negative 6. 3 minus 6 is negative 3. So I'm going to take that new form, the factored form, split the middle, negative 3x, to be 3x minus 6x. And I'm kind of going to forget about this 2 now, okay? This 2 is kind of like whatever. All you really need to do is factor that middle part, okay? So we factor the first one and the second one. 2 and 3 have no common factor, so just factor the x. It's going to be 2x plus 3. Negative 6 minus 9. They're both negative, so my answer is going to have a negative. 6 and 9 are divisible by 3, and that's it. So negative 6 divided by negative 3 is a positive 2 with the x. Negative 9 divided by negative 3 is a positive 3. And again, I know I've done it right if my parentheses match. They do. So again, the matching parentheses come down, and these coefficients become a new parentheses over here. X minus sine 3. So I've factored, cool, and now I got to solve. So x minus 3 equals 0, 2x plus 3 equals 0. What do I do? The opposite, add 3 to 0, and I get x equals 3. Now this one's a two-stepper, so get rid of the loner, minus 3 first, 2x equals negative 3. Then I divide by this coefficient 2, and I get x equals negative 3 over 2. Now the only other thing you might have to do is like on number 4. So one other little note that I want to make sure you know is that you can have no negative a factor. Okay, so you can have no negative a. Your a cannot be negative right here. So what do you have to do? To factor a negative 1. So if I factor out a negative 1, it's going to change every one of these signs. So negative 1 comes out. This becomes a positive 3x squared. The positive becomes a negative 8x. And the negative becomes a positive 4. Okay? So I'm going to give you a few minutes. I want to see if you can try using the inside of that parentheses. A times C, factor pairs, which one adds up to the middle term negative 8, right? Split it out, group it, factor it, new factors, solve it. If you can do all that in the next couple minutes, I'll be impressed. But let's see if you can do it. And then I'm going to go over the answer with you